So, welcome to this new installment of Ghost Founder Shorts. Today, we are here with my good friend Jason Nutter. We're streaming together. I'm in Germany. He's in Singapore. So we're ultra international in this episode. And today, we're going to talk about a topic that is super interesting, in my opinion. And Jason has a great life experience. Learning, like, he has learned it through his own life experience, and that is networking, culture, and the importance of context for relationship building. Jason, thank you so much for taking the time and being here with us today. Welcome, welcome.
Always excited to talk to you, Mr. Lovis.
So, how's it going? You told me there was a little upheaval in the daycare.
Yeah, just got a call from childcare saying that I had to pick Theo up at 10 o'clock in the morning. So he's at home now. And that's why I'm sitting here in a dimly lit makeshift studio having this international conversation.
That's really cool. Thanks for not canceling. So, with my first guest, when I talked with Thibaut, we
Hmm.
kind of arrived at the point where we realized that how to be a young professional and raise a family, like having young children and be a young professional. That might be a
Yeah,
niche topic that we should hone in on because we're in this part of our life where a lot of people our age are having small children, and just kind of trying to
yeah,
make life happen at the same time with managing the family is like a challenge, it seems.
yeah. Yeah. You might have to look for a guest that's what, 50, 60 years old, because I think all of us now are just faking it till we make it, right? Like I have no idea if I'm doing it the right way. And I'll have to see how my kids ending up to see if I've been successful on that front.
That's true. It's true. There's lead and lag, lead and lag indicators.
Yeah.
Um, well, again, yeah. Thanks for taking the time. I'm excited to talk today. So let's start with your background a little bit. So, how have you learned kind of what you're going to talk to us today? What's your professional background? Did you have any jobs that taught you stuff, or kind of how do you approach this whole networking thing?
Yeah. So I don't know if I've ever really thought of it like, as a thing per se, right? Like I grew up in a few different countries in Asia, went to different schools in my time, then moved to Australia to finish my degree. In between, I had to go serve 2 years in the army in Singapore. Um, Yeah, and then along the way, of course, I started off being an engineer, then decided to try my hand at teaching, then decided to try my hand at sales. Worked in a few different countries, right? Like, and so every single time I've moved into a new environment, I had to, and it's the same for everybody, right? Once you're in a new environment, you feel a little bit uh, awkward, a little bit uncomfortable, and then you're faced with some choices like, okay, how do I get planted? How do I get comfortable? How do I know what's going on? How do I get my roots in, get my bearings, so that I can do what I need to do, right?
Right.
And in those scenarios, I guess you could say, oh, I'm gonna go read a book on the topic, right? Or I could go check Google to see, hey, what's this whole environment about? Um, but for me, I always found, hey, the easiest way is just to go say hi to the people that are already in that group
Yeah.
and just ask them, right? So instead of looking at a map, I always defaulted to saying hi to someone and saying, hey, do you know how to get to point A? Right? I'm looking for this place. Could you help me out? And I don't know what got me down that path, but yeah, I always I noticed I hate reading instructions. I'd rather just speak to someone, right? Um, and maybe in my adult years, uh, I'm starting to notice now that not everybody takes that route. So,
Right.
um, my wife's German, and we went. I remember one time going to TUM with her, right? And she was looking for a small bit for our drill, right? And I was like, "Hey, there's a person over there. Let's just go ask her." And she's like, "No, no, no, no. I'll have a look at the map on the at the front of the shop. It tells
Yeah.
us where everything is, so we should look there first before we go talk to someone."
Right.
So things like that just hit me, and it tells me that okay, it's not everybody's natural inclination to go speak to somebody to ask for help. Yeah, but for me, to me, it's so much of a richer way of doing things, right?
That makes
Um,
sense for sure. So, I mean, people have
yeah,
different handicaps, right? Or hang-ups, I guess. Maybe hang-ups is too strong of a word, but yeah, some people have a kind of shy. They don't want to signal, "Hey, I don't know something," or "I need help with something."
hmm
Um, I mean, being German myself and living here, it does seem like, oh, you don't want to burden the other person with your inquiry.
yeah,
But then at the same time, asking somebody at a shop to help you find something, like, it's their job, and they'll be happy that you found it because you're bringing money in the door, right? So it's very much in their interest to help you out.
yeah,
So yeah, it's just a different way to go about it. And the cool thing, of course, asking for help is you have a chance of making a connection, right?
yeah, 100%. And um, you get free optionality as well, if I can put it that way. So if you were just to, if you were to look just at a map, you'd be able to get to that spot, right? But if you were asking someone from the conversation, you might get told, hey, maybe that's not where you should go after all. There's somewhere else that's in the vicinity that's actually a much better place to, I don't know, have a coffee, or a much better person to talk to if you want to speak to the boss. You know, it's different. So you can you can use this principle on many, many different levels, right? If you're trying to speak to a key person in the company, like, is the better way to call the number on their website and say, hey, I want to speak to Mr. CEO? Or maybe, another way would be to find that this guy has a private blog, right? And you can read that blog and then get to understand who this person is. You get to understand, do I still want to talk to him? Like, does he seem like, do I authentically want to make a connection? And if so, you can reach out to him via that different avenue. And yeah, the connection you end up making is just so much more rich. So yeah, and just to color a little, go a bit deeper into what I was saying earlier, right? I'm my parents are also from mixed, different cultural backgrounds. So my mom's Chinese, my dad's Western Australian, Anglo Australian guy, right? So
Hmm.
growing up with them as parents, you realize that there are many different ways to see something, right? Like the most basic. I remember a conversation once when I was, I don't know, about 6 years old, and they were just joking to each other about how one should boil rice, right? And my mom was like, "Oh, you do this and that, and you wash the rice first, and then you put it in a rice cooker, and blah 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 blah." My dad just went, "No, you just put it in a pot, right? And then you just put it on low, and then you make sure there's an inch of water above the top level of the rice, and then you just give it half an hour, and then it's good." And then you realize, oh my gosh, these two people are so sure that they're correct about something as basic as cooking rice, which we've supposedly been doing for thousands of years, right? So
Yeah.
then you intimately you realize on a very deep level that, hey, actually, maybe even though everyone acts like they know everything, maybe they don't, maybe they know one way, but maybe there's 50 different ways. But I
Sure.
think if you're from a more homogeneous sort of background, those discussions wouldn't even occur, right? Of course, you cook rice this way, right? Because
So
everybody,
everybody does it this way.
exactly, right?
Yeah.
So if you were growing up in Germany, I guess nobody questions whether or not you should boil potatoes with the skin on or something,
Right.
But but you have a different when you realize that, hey, you can do it with the skin on, and oh, maybe you should not add salt or whatever, right?
Yeah.
At this point of the boiling process, then it just illuminates your mind, and you just realize, okay, there are many things that I actually don't know. And then maybe that's helped me to say, hey, why don't I ask? Right? There might be so many things, so many treasures hidden just beneath this stone. Why don't I just go unturn it? And all I have to do is say hi and ask a
Yeah.
simple question, right?
Right. And because
So
I guess you ask the same question, depending on context, you get vastly different answers. That's kind of the point, right? So
yeah.
trying to reel this a little bit towards business context, right? So
Hmm.
we heard a little bit about your background, very multicultural. You've lived in many different countries, but I know you've also applied this in business, right? So you were the head of sales for a German startup selling high value equipment. So can you say like a little bit about, I guess, just like in a really like sober business context, why is this significant? Like, why would I want to understand this to do better in my job or with my company?
Yeah. Okay. So maybe you just even take just one small step back, right? Like the point, the way I even got this job, for example, right? Um, when I got to Germany, I had a small duffel bag, and I had 3 months on my visa to find a job. And I was in a small city called Leipzig, and I was told by basically everyone that the chances of finding a job there without being able to speak German is like close to zero, right? And so I had two ways of thinking about it. Like, okay, do I go and make sure that I get my German up to a certain proficiency before I go look for a job, or do I just own that I can't speak German, but I can speak Mandarin? I come from Asia. Maybe that could be something that I could leverage, right? So just that thought is important, just to be able to have that awareness of what your value might be. You only need to find one connection where I'm not going to be working for 10 people. I'm just going to be working for one company. So I just need to find that one company, right?
Right.
Uh, and then, all right. So then I heard that, there's this company called Wave Labs. Um, and they're a small startup, and they're in the solar industry, and I've had some experience in the solar industry. So then I got told, oh, if you want to approach somebody in Germany, a company, you need to like basically, I don't know, create like a folder, right? Like create like a massive booklet of who you are, what you've done, what was your thesis at university, get a professional to take a picture of you, et cetera, right? So I was thinking, okay, why don't I just write the CEO like a short message? So this is probably my version of just asking for help, right?
Right.
So I just wrote the guy and said, "Hey, this is who I am. I heard that I need to prepare this massive, produce a massive booklet of what I've done and who I am, and et cetera, et cetera. But before I do that, do you think um, I might be of help, right?" And he just quickly replies. So he replies to my 5 bullet point email and says, "Hey, come over for coffee. Let's say hi and let's see what can happen, right? And 2 weeks
Right.
later, I had a job, you know. So
There you
that's
go.
one way, because if I had have done it the other way, I would just be one of many, and I'd probably be doing it not as well. I wouldn't be able to produce that interview booklet as well as the other Germans in the
Sure.
in the
Yeah,
in
yeah,
the
because
field, right?
it takes practice, right? And the so another thought that I had that job that you ended up getting might not have been advertised anywhere, right?
Yeah, it actually was not advertised. It was so I went on their website and I saw that there was an ad from 2 years before then saying that they were looking for someone to help with product sales in Korea. So I'm definitely not, I have zero chance of selling anything in Korea with Korean, right? I can't speak Korean. I don't know Korean culture that well. Um, so I was just kind of fishing or feeling around in the dark, right? Just saying, hey, I saw you're looking for someone in Korea. Would you be maybe looking for someone in the rest of East Asia or the Asia Pacific region, you know?
Yeah.
So it's nearly free for people for you to ask a question.
Right. Yeah.
It costs you 10 seconds of time or 10 minutes if you're going to write an email, but it costs you a lot in terms of your ego, right? Because I think what stops most people is they feel like their ego is going to be impacted if one, they get rejected, or two, if they get judged.
Right.
So if I were to offer a word of, I wouldn't say it's advice, it's more like a hack. I would say think of it in terms of you're not asking them for a favor, you're asking them for directions, right?
Hmm.
So if you were to write somebody an email and say, hey, I'm super passionate about XYZ, and I would love to talk to somebody at ABC company because I'm so passionate about XYZ. Could you help me? Most people would be happy to help you, right? It's not a zero sum game. So that person that decides to help you, uh, it makes them feel good and useful as well, right? Because they were just a catalyst for a connection, and everyone
Hmm.
loves to do that. So you're actually doing everybody, every stakeholder in this soup bowl a huge favor by you asking for directions, right? And in that way, I think you hack your mind so that you don't feel bad because you're not asking for a favor per se. You're not asking for a job per se. You're asking for directions on who might help you to be well connected, which is good for everyone involved, you know?
Yeah, that's a good lesson. So when I think about, I guess, sales in general, right, it's always awkward. Like, say you do a cold call or cold email, cold call, whatever. How do you even get to the person that you want to talk to, right? So I guess the approach of asking for directions, like, hey, this is kind of what I want to bring to the table. Who would appreciate hearing this, right? That's a much better approach than saying, hey, this is what I got. You want to buy it?
Exactly. Because everyone gets defensive. The moment that happens, everyone thinks, I'm not going to get cheated by this guy, right? But
Yeah.
if you pick up the phone and you say, hey, just to get a minute of your time. I'm really looking, would you know if anyone would be interested in I don't know, this high level uh, measurement equipment, right? Would
Yeah.
you know that? Would you know if this would be of interest to anyone at the company? That person would say yes, no, maybe, right? And even if they say yes, even if they say no, they wouldn't say it in a defensive way. Oh, I can't wait to put the phone down, right? They would be
Right.
more like, oh no, but hey, maybe somebody else in another department at the university might be, right? And then you
Mm.
can then say, would you mind, if you're not comfortable in giving me their number, could I leave my number with you, right? And then you've already begun like an authentic conversation.
Yeah.
So maybe key to everything, underlying everything is, being authentic. So if you're authentically wanting to do something that you think is going to be of benefit, then just like the that Paulo Coelho book, The Alchemist, right? He says if you really want to do something, then the whole universe can't help but conspire in your direction, you know.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of sounds a bit mystical and everything, but I think if deep down you really feel strongly that this thing I'm trying to do is actually good, a lot of things start to fall in place for you, because the way you think about it changes too. You don't think about it from a point of scarcity. You think of it from a point of abundance, right?
Right. The yeah, kind of what you said before, like you only, like with the case of the job, you really only need the one, right? So is it really so crazy to think that there's going to be one company in a city of 600,000 people that will be happy to hire you? Well, of course, that's not crazy. Certainly, there is. There's probably a dozen, and you only
Yeah,
have to make one connection, right?
yeah.
Um, let's see, really quick. So I know you have. So I kind of want to put you on the spot a little bit. So thank you for the introduction and the you know kind of train of thought that it triggers for you. But so if you had to teach it right in like 5 to 10 minutes, how do you network and how do you take culture into account when you do that?
Okay. So when you network, ask before you network, ask yourself why. Like, what are you trying to do? Okay, so you're networking to find out information, or are you networking to sell something, or are you networking because you need to know who you should talk to? I think that's a important first step, so that you don't go. You need to kind of handle it like with a precision object, right, rather than with a sledgehammer. So
Mhm.
networking for a reason. So some people network because they want to find out about life in general, about the industry in general. So they go to general networking events, they talk to people, they ask insightful questions, they get answers. It colors their perspective. But let's give some examples, okay? Like let's say I want to network, I don't know, just now we went through networking for a job, right? What would you like to go through now? Like maybe networking for finding out customers, maybe finding out
Sure.
who might be a good customer, or let's say finding out, yeah,
Well,
if your product fits, right? If your product fits the market and how you'd be able to get like push volume up. Um, I would start a short list, right? Of think of things in terms of from their perspective. Uh, who might be interested in this product? We might be wrong at the start, right? We might come up with a list of 50 people, 20 people, or companies, and find out that we're way off. But that's
yeah.
good to know for a startup, right? Then, secondly, think about things from their perspective. We oftentimes forget, like we see things only from our viewpoint, our lens, right? And so let's say we go again, let's take another step to the side, like with culture, right? So we've got that list of 20 people. So now let's think, okay, in terms of culture, what does culture mean? So culture can mean something on a individual level, something on a national level, something on a ethnicity level even, right? Culture is kind
Mhm.
of this operating system that we have in our head or in our
Mm.
heart, you know, like it's this thing that combines everything. I can something as simple as, let's say, bargaining,
Yeah.
right? If I were to bargain, let's say in Germany, I would uh, I would often get frowned upon, right? Like it's an act that is not considered to be classy or correct, let's say, right? But if I
Yeah.
were to do the same thing in India, If I were to go and buy something without um, without bargaining hard, I might lose my job, right? So that's just one example of how culture on the same topic can differ so greatly, right? So before you go ahead and start networking, think about who are these people that I'm trying to connect with, and what might their cultural uh, lens look like, or cultural, I don't know, but think
Like
about how
vantage point.
yeah, their vantage point, their makeup, the way, let's just say the way they vibe, okay? Because if you know that, you will fine tune your networking delivery or connection attempt towards their culture, right?
Yeah.
So if I was to go and write an email or try and get in touch with somebody from Sweden to say, hey, I would love to join your company, versus writing to somebody in Malaysia saying, hey, I would love to join your company. Uh, to me, the cultural aspect, you have to consider that. If not, your attempt, your success rate will go down by a big margin, right? So just I might be in danger of stereotyping very heavily here, right? But I actually think from my experience that it is very true. So, for example, if I were to reach out to a Western uh, person or Western corporation, but let's say Western person, okay, a Northern European person, and I wanted to either sell them something or I wanted to work with that person, right? I would first touch on their mission. What are they trying to do? You know, so if say I was trying to sell that product, I would talk to them and say, hey, I see on your website that this is what you're trying to do. This is your mission. This is where you want to be in 3 years. I think I can help you to get there either by working with you or by you buying my product. Okay.
Yeah.
If I also talk to a Southeast Asian person, right, and I wanted to work with them or I wanted to sell them a product, I would touch on that mission, but only very briefly. Then I would go very quickly into the monetary aspects, the tangible aspects, right? Hey, you know, I see that you're a business that deals in this. I think my product's going to be able to help you cut costs, or it's going to help you to increase your margin. You know,
Yeah.
so I don't know why it's like that. I don't know why certain cultures gravitate more towards the mission, other cultures gravitate more towards the balance sheet, right? The nuts and bolts, the cents and dollars. But
Yeah.
it's just the way it is, right? And so yeah, so I don't know if that's helpful or not, but it just has helped me over the years and over having hundreds and hundreds of different conversations with different people uh, to realize that you can't approach every single meeting with a blank slate, right? You can't go in there with a very broad strategy. You have to take that time to think where are they coming from, what's important to them,
Yeah.
and then fine tune your delivery so that resonating with them, right? And it's just so important that culture of that person's background or that company's culture, those things are just very, very important. And you have to keep that in mind while you're preparing for that meeting.
Yeah. So is there maybe like I wanted my visual mind goes to like a babushka, like a Russian doll effect. Because if you're, so you say you have no context for a new culture you're trying to approach. Maybe before I sit down or before I have that Zoom call with somebody in Southeast Asia, maybe I should try to make a connection to somebody where it's no stakes and ask them like, hey, I'm about to sit down with this CEO of a company. Like, how would you go about that, right? Because now, so now you're kind of applying your asking for directions with a person where the stakes are low to increase your chances then for the big conversation.
Yeah. So I would go even one before I do that, I would go even one step further back and maybe try and find some YouTube videos, right, that this CEO has given, some interviews. Listen to him speak.
Mm-hmm.
Is he a no nonsense kind of guy? Is
Mm.
he or she someone that likes to talk about the vision of the company, or is he or she someone that always pulls you back down to the numbers? Is he talking about his
Mm-hmm.
people a lot? Is he talking about his product a lot? Is he talking about the global macro geopolitical situation a lot? All these
Mm-hmm.
things give you insights into who this person is and therefore how his company will be run.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get to buy.
We're having internet trouble right now. Hopefully it'll rebound.